Avengers! Assemble.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Excelsior for October 10th. This is the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. I am your director, Christian Buckley, joined by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior, but a very subdued Excelsior, Christian.
Yeah. Maybe I was
feels like we're marching at a funeral's pace.
Yeah, maybe I was like a little too on with that intro as a host, but because like, man, this week is, we're gonna get to it, but like, man, it's not looking great.
No, it's really not.
How are you?
I'm good. As good as one can be throughout all the perils of the year 2020. But yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I had a very busy week, midterms taking precedent, so didn't get a ton of time to put into Avengers this week. Not that I really wanted to, but yeah, we have a lot to go over today. There's not really news, but there is. Why don't we just kick things off with Fury's report? As always, normally going over the War Table blog and recapping it. For some reason, there's not one this week.
Not good, Christian.
No.
Not good.
Very not good. So, from a quick scan of my own personal war table in my game, it seems like the priority missions for the week are both villain sectors.
That's what I gathered as well.
Mm-hmm. The low power level villain sector is Sight Unseen, which is fighting Taskmaster in New York. The modifiers are Pressure, Resurgence, and Collider. And the high power level priority mission for the week is Gathering of Evil, which is the Tundra fight with Abomination. Those have the modifiers of Famine, Incinerator, Fireball, and Resurgence. You know, it's the same ones that cycle out all the time. Both of those will net you some gold epic gear for your hero. Do you have anything to say in terms of the priority missions both being villain sectors, or any follow-up on our conversation from prior episodes about the rotation of villain sectors? Like, are you still excited about that? Like, seeing a villain sector be priority this week for gold gear, is that like, oh sweet, something new? Or is it just like, oh, again Taskmaster, again Abomination? Like, where are you at with that?
I think right now it's a little boring because it's essentially like having 4 priority missions, or 4 villain sectors to do, but they're all the same villain sectors each week, you know, and especially each day. So it is a little strange. I was thinking about this earlier. I do like the idea of the priority missions and how they cycle in hero-specific missions that any hero can play. So, like, I remember Rocket's Red Glare was one of them for, like, one of the weeks, and that's a Captain America mission. But I ran through it because it was a priority mission. It was open to every hero. I ran through it as Iron Man. So I do like them, like, implementing those missions and opening them up to your whole roster. So yeah, doing it with the villain sectors is a little strange, and it even just makes the game more repetitive, which is something because it's already very repetitive.
Yeah, like it feels like the trend so far was for priority missions, like you said, bringing up story-centric missions and allowing you to replay those. But yeah, I think you nailed it. Like, pulling from something you already could have done does make it feel a little more repetitive. But that's how that works out for this week. Again, there are priority harm rooms as well, but the War Table blog, again, really details it very well. And I guess the bigger thing to talk about there is why didn't we have one this week?
Yeah, the silence is really deafening.
Yeah.
Especially for a game that's supposed to be like a games of service. Like, constant communication is key in any aspect in life, let's say. But with games as a service specifically, like, we've mentioned this before, but those types of games are pretty much governed by the community, and having no interaction with your community, especially when the game right now is in a very fragile state, is very concerning. And we can get into this soon, but is it Paul Tassi, the journalist who covers Avengers? I think that's his name.
Yeah, Paul Tassi for Forbes, I believe,
Right.
covers it pretty
He
consistently.
yeah, he wrote an article recently and used the same verbiage, like exact verbiage he used discussing Avengers that he described with Anthem. And for those that don't know, Anthem was a EA Games as a Service. I think it was BioWare actually.
Yep.
That just totally fell off the face of the earth, like very quickly. And he was essentially comparing Avengers to that game, which is very worrisome.
Yeah, and I do think while I think both of us still really like the game, right? Like we're both fans of this game. We like the campaign.
Yeah.
We like the experience we've had so far. If we didn't like it, we wouldn't have like. For me, probably close to 100 hours of the game so far. For you, probably over it. Like, it's a fun game. We enjoy it and we want it to survive. What's disheartening and the reason why this week feels a little more dry than most and more disheartening than others is because we're officially 1 month in. As of this recording, we're a little over 1 month in now. There was a recent stat that came out that the concurrent players on PC, so the surveying the launchers that the game launches from, I'm assuming it's just Steam. I don't know if it's on Epic, but PC concurrent players, so at one singular time, the number of players playing the game dipped below 1,000, which is tricky for matchmaking. It's tricky for trying to work as a team. And, as we get further away from any launch, especially multiplayer games, as time goes on, that curve's going to flatten out, in terms of the number of people playing at one time. But I do think that it is slightly concerning seeing that number right now. You could also counter that and be like, hey, majority of the players are probably on PS4. We don't have September sales yet for NPDs. That's coming out next week. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, okay, yeah, the PC version, already people were debating if it's a good port or not. But the PlayStation Advantage exists, like Spider-Man's coming. So a lot of people on the casual side that just really enjoy Marvel that got the game might have just gotten it on PS4 because PS4 has sold the best out of all these systems this generation. It's getting the advantage of Spider-Man. So yes, I don't think dipping below 1,000 concurrents is an end-all be-all death sentence for the game, but I do think it's something to take into consideration when we get to the biggest thing of this week in tandem with No War Table, and that's just the lack of a roadmap, the uncertainty on when content's coming, and a recent update from Scott Amos, who's the studio head for Crystal Dynamics. But before we get into that, Jack, do you want to just update what your characters are looking like?
Yeah. So like I mentioned last week, I was mostly playing Captain America, and he is my now third level 150 character. So I got 3, and I might go after Kamala as my 4th, just to have a balanced 4-member party if I'm running hives or whatever. Still debating that, because right now I'm pretty bored with the game, to be completely honest with you, so there's nothing really compelling me to do that. But there's that, and I also completed everyone's challenge cards except for Hulk and Thor. But by next episode, that will be done, because they're under 20-ish points left, and with a combination of doing dailies and weeklies by next Thursday, I'll be done with those. I'll probably even be done with those before the weeklies, so that's where I'm at.
You're sitting on a nice pile of microtransaction currency right now, aren't you?
Oh, yes.
Speaking of that, I did check in on the marketplace refresh for the week. Again, still kind of underwhelmed, but I honestly think Kamala has the best skins in this game.
I agree. So there was the Iron Man one, which was gray and blue, which I was like, that's kind of cool. Wouldn't want to spend $10 on it, and
Yeah,
then
like you
what was
have that
Kamala's?
colorway on the cooler version of the suit though for like getting the maxed out challenge card.
Yeah, the maxed out Iron Man is blue and black, I think, is the two like colorways. But yeah, I honestly prefer that one.
Yeah. As a Thor main, the Thor one, it's been better this week than other weeks. It's still
Mm-hmm.
not one that I want to go in on. But speaking of, Thor is still my main. I'm waiting to get him to 150 until I find gear that I really like because I don't want to waste
Good
those
call.
resources.
That's a very good call.
Um, I've still been getting my other heroes leveled. So I think Nat is at level 50. I'm not sure what her power level is. Steve, I think, is level 40 right now. And again, power level, I'm not focused on that right now. I'm still leveling them. Um, and I'm still bouncing around between my other squad member. I don't know if I want to prioritize Hulk or Iron Man or Kamala. I've found myself going to Kamala just because I would like to have a healer on the team, especially if in the future I'm going to have to rely on my AI partners for stuff like the Mega Hive, or if there is new content in the future that is like the Mega Hive in terms of single player gauntlet, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
having a healer I think is important for the way I play because my Thor, let me tell you this, I don't think before I go into fight with Thor. I just charge in.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite usage for Kamala is like her healing spirit ability, the L1.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's like getting me to maybe go after doing a 150 Kamala, but I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, because like I could also just respec my Thor to be a healer with the Bifrost ability, but like I I can't see myself anytime soon not playing Thor and then having to use that. So like I might as well just do Kamala.
Yeah.
But speaking of looking to future content, we still don't have a roadmap. Last week we were like, oh, by this episode we're recording right now, we're probably gonna have seen the new War Table presentation. We'll probably know the roadmap. We'll probably have a sense of what October content looks like, and we don't.
Yeah. I think it's important to point out that for the most part, like these past few episodes, we've been pretty optimistic and we've been giving Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix the benefit of the doubt.
Hmm.
Um, just because they've been good about messaging this game, particularly like very close to launch. We got a bunch of war tables, like 3 war tables within this past summer
Hmm.
before launch. And they were promising like future content, obviously. So I think with that, we were basically giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I still do, and I think you probably do as well.
Oh, I do.
Um, yeah, and like I've been mentioning this before, but like with the pedigree of a title called Marvel's Avengers, and with Marvel Games like sort of overseeing this as well to an extent, like it's not a dead game. Just right now, this week on October 10th, as it stands, it's worrisome,
Hmm.
and I'm sure COVID it affects their roadmap as well. I don't know
Hmm.
what development looks like for them right now. I'm sure it's radically more challenging than it was like months ago. So,
Hmm. And
but yeah,
and
right now it's just a little concerning.
yeah, and I'll even add on like I see some reports and like some fans of the game criticizing Crystal for not communicating, and while I am still baffled that there was not a War Table blog this week, on the subreddit r/play Avengers, they still are. As of this morning, they're still like replying to people's questions and concerns on things. So I think communication is still there. You have to look for it, but there are still several posts that are going up every hour that occasionally devs will comment on, update on. Before we started recording today, even somebody posted like, "Hey, got my first exotic." I was super bummed when I looked at it though, because the stats were 130 for the power level, and a dev from Crystal said, "Hey, we're aware of this. We're it's going to be fixed in the next patch. We don't have an ETA yet, but this is something we are fixing right now. So like the post went up 3 hours ago. The response was 2 hours ago. So like there is still a communication going on, and it's just not, I think, the way that would make the community as a whole happy. But the studio head Scott Amos in an interview with Kotaku did promise that one, there will be more stuff to do for those that are bored, and the team is expecting the concurrence and user base to always return for new content based on one, their projections, and two, what they're putting into it. So I have a quote from the interview with Kotaku from Scott Amos that I will just read off, and then we can spin off of this. Quote, "To our players, every day we fight to make the best game possible for our community. We have a great community management team at Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix who funnel all of your concerns, suggestions, and feedback to the development team daily. We are listening. We are making fixes, improvements, and additions as fast as safely as we can to make Marvel's Avengers the game we all aspire it to be. As such, we have a number of new content pieces coming in the weeks ahead, including a totally new Warzone mission type called Tachyon Rifts, a new outpost that's a jumping off point for new story missions in the future, and AIM's cloning lab, which requires a coordinated high-level group of 4 players to beat with new top-end loot rewards for finishing it. And in each of these updates, we do tuning and bug fixing to enhance the overall experience. In addition, we've announced 2 new heroes coming in the near future, Kate Bishop in Operation Taking Aim, and after that, the double feature operations starring Clint Barton. This is the 2 Hawkeyes we mentioned in the last War Table. These new operations pick up right from where the main Reassemble campaign ended in the core game and will propel the overall world story forward with new mysteries and villains, as well as new multiplayer content. Lastly, we will continue to add new content to the game in the coming months as we address issues and overall game balance, including loot distribution and quality of life features everyone is clamoring for to improve our day-to-day experience, from accessibility to co-op communication tools to balancing the economy. We'll have more information and details about the very near content drops in a blog scheduled for next week, and we have new community communication initiatives coming soon to even more directly share fun and useful information for you." Then he signed off with like a very nice, like, "Thank you for making the game possible," blah, 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 like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is we have new information and details about very near content drops in a blog scheduled for next week and a new community communication initiative. That's slightly confusing because like I thought the War Table blog was good enough,
Yeah,
personally.
Yeah, it seems like they're adding some more things that kind of seem similar.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's unneeded, but
Yeah, like, do you think this is going to be like a mini weekly video package or something? Like, what do you think? Like, are they hiring? Do they need people who already recap their weekly updates?
yeah, I honestly don't know. It could be that it could be like that's kind of sounds like a smaller version of like a War Table, so maybe it's something like that. Honestly, it's probably just like an updated War Table blog post.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I don't even know.
Yeah, because
it sounds like they're focusing more on communication. So that's good though.
yeah, because I do think that while I think both of us are fine with the War Table blog as it exists, I think the communication on the subreddit is really good. I do think a video package, even if it is like a 2 to 3 minute recap of all the new stuff every week, it gets more eyes on it immediately, you know? So I could see that be the avenue they go. But do you think because there's a refresh next week in terms of communication, that's why there wasn't a War Table blog this week? Because I could see that be their line of thought, but I don't know why it was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible like they just wanted to save what they had to say for a more substantial like line of communication, but yeah, right now, especially with the article from Paul Tassi coming out with the sub 1,000 players on PC, like, and there being no War Table this week, like it's definitely a bad look. Despite them probably not meaning for it to be, it doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
But from what this says, like clearly they haven't abandoned the game, and they have a lot more content coming out. So I'm just hoping that they communicate their plan better, and I would hope by the end of October there's a roadmap, and if there's not, I think then at that point then that's very concerning.
Yeah, and I like I would think they would want to have a war table presentation before Kate drops, just to like tee that up a little better, and really introduce the raid, the AIM Secret Lab, and with that in mind, the last war table we did get pre-launch, or launch day, I think, for early access, they said the next one is going to have the content roadmap, right? And it seems slightly vague when they're talking about Kate, because like we had confirmation Kate is October. Now it seems like they're just saying soon. So like I don't know if that means end of October, if something's getting rearranged. Like I was listening to Kind of Funny Gamescast this week, and Greg Miller, Fred Mirabella are basically the two on that panel that are playing a lot of this game. And they brought up the idea of the Black Panther stuff and the Wakanda map and the leaked Wakanda raid. Like, for you seeing this recap, do you think any of the content they're talking about is that content that got rescheduled because of Chadwick Boseman's passing, or like what's your takeaway with this in terms of looking to the future outside of the raid that we all kind of thought we'd have by now, and like all this other questionable content drops?
Yeah, I think the Black Panther Wakanda stuff, I think that was kind of always meant to be maybe around December, considering that Kate and Hawkeye would probably be around this time. So I always assumed that that stuff would be later, that they were probably just planning on teeing it up back towards launch. But yeah, now it seems like even the Kate stuff may be pushed a little bit. Like, I was scrubbing for the word October in that thing that you just read, and like what you were saying, and it's not in there. And maybe that's just me reading into it, but they've been like pretty adamant that definitely Kate is in October. And the fact that they didn't say it was this month even, is a little weird. They said like things coming, new content coming, or in the coming months. That's probably they're referring to like the Wakanda stuff or other stuff that's coming. But yeah, it's slightly making me less confident that we'd even get anything this month, because we're I don't know, almost halfway through.
Yeah, the direct quote in the Scott Amos response is, "In addition, we've announced 2 new heroes coming in the near future, Kate Bishop in Operation Taking Aim, and the following one would be Clinton Barton." And at the end, once again, they say, "We'll have new information and details about the very near content drops in a blog scheduled for next week." So it's like, I don't know. Very much about this week, it's questions of why the silence. We know you're being on top of it in terms of talking on the subreddit and stuff like that, but like in a forward-facing way, in a very straightforward manner, why the questionable updates? Why the lack of a solid plan right now? And to speak to what you brought up earlier about just being bored with the game, like, I still have some things I can do. I still have some of the priority missions, or not priority missions, sorry, the iconic missions for like Hulk and Black Widow. I haven't done those yet. But just like the overall feeling right now with the game, it's just a little disheartening, because I just don't know where my time and resources when I play this game should be spent right now, right? Like, I've been easing off even more so recently because I was under the assumption, and we very well could still get this, but that Kate was coming soon, like very soon this month. So I was like, hey, you know what? I had a busy week. I'll dive back in when Kate hits. I'll finish off Thor to 150, and I'll just go hard on getting Kate to 150. She'll give me a second 150 character, maybe a new main. And it's just a little rough, you know? It's like trying to plan my interaction with the game right now around a game that's presumably getting more content soon. It's a weird balance.
It is, and like we know we're getting stuff in the future, right? Like they're not going to be like, "Oh, this game's dead. Sorry, you don't get Spider-Man." Like
Yeah.
that's I don't think people are like reading into that way because that's just not how that would work. Um, but it, yeah, it like the game's not dead by any means.
No, yeah, and I don't think anyone really thinks that. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's definitely concerning a month out that we're having these questions and conversations, but like you brought up again, it's Marvel's Avengers. It's a name and a budget that I don't think you just shut down after a month of unstable stuff, and I don't think anybody thinks that.
yeah,
I think
and a lot of like games as a service games kind of start off this way because they don't really know like they definitely like devs obviously like have a plan for like the content that they want to release later on. But like we've been mentioning a lot on this show, like a lot of the game's futures like that are sort of dictated by the fans. So like these games kind of don't really come into their own until like a year or two after launch.
yeah,
So the fact that we're a month out and it's like a little unstable right now, like makes sense. It's not like sort of an excuse or anything, but it does sort of like align with other games of the service that we've seen.
yeah, and I do think the fear might come in like 6 months from now if we're still in the same state, you know, and then like Spider Man's out by then. It's like, okay, so what's the commitment like? But I don't think that's a conversation to worry about right now, because presumably, like they were ready to show a ton of new content, you know, because like the leak was that Wakanda has a raid, like a full blown raid. We don't even have the first raid yet, but like the rumor is there's a raid for Wakanda. Also in this post, they mentioned that in the number of new content pieces coming in the weeks ahead, yes, there's a new Warzone type, which is interesting. Again, trying to diversify the gameplay. But a new outpost that's, quote, a jumping off point for new story missions in the future. Do you think that's Wakanda? Do you think Wakanda is the new social hub, like the new area to go to? So we have the helicarrier, the anthill, and Wakanda.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I was thinking about this earlier. Like I was thinking it may be related to Hawkeye, but like I feel like the location for Hawkeye wouldn't be all that different from what we've already seen. So I think it would probably have to be something fairly different, and I think Hawkeye definitely fits that bill. So that's certainly possible.
Outside of that, though, is there anything else that stands out to you in the Scott Amos post, like in terms of the content types, like anything that stands out at all?
It seems like he's mostly just saying, "Hang in there." Like we're gonna be updating the game. Just hang in there. So he doesn't really say anything new, right? Like we've already known everything that he's said. He's just sort of reiterating it and just kind of letting us know that you know it's still gonna be this game's still gonna be supported. I think it was sort of more of a I wouldn't go as far to say like desperation, but like in a way to like reach out and like let people know because obviously he knew that the game was hurting. So yeah, like a lot of the conversations about this game are more negative, or if not negative, just more sort of like out of boredom. And I think like the devs obviously know that. So I think they're just basically trying to reach out and just be like, the game will still be supported.
Yeah, because I've had a similar feeling about PlayStation with the PS5 until recently, but like you see that the community is a little like puzzled about the ongoings right now in terms of the messaging, and you're sitting on stuff that's ready to be shown. I don't know why you're not showing it. Like if the Wakanda stuff was ready, a month ago to show. Like, we're a month out. Just drop that trailer that you had cut already that you took out of the presentation. Like, I don't think they're just. I don't think it's still too soon. Because like that was very much within like hours of his passing, right? So like, yeah, that would have been a bad look at
Yeah.
that point. It's been a month, like I feel like we've had time to breathe and like move on, and like it can be separate now, I think, in terms of a presentation, right? Like a Black Panther is still a Marvel character,
Hmm.
that exists in other mediums where I don't I don't think they're still waiting because it feels too soon to them. I just don't know why they are waiting.
Yeah, it it is such a choice not to be as communicative as possible, like to your
Mm-hmm.
community. Um, as we've been saying though, like we've been giving them the benefit of the doubt. I think hopefully by this time next week, for next episode, we're a bit more positive,
Mm-hmm.
based on the communication that has been hopefully going on in the past week, like what they've been promising. So I think hopefully for next episode we will have a better idea what the coming months will actually look like and have some like concrete dates, or at least like to say, hey, we're gonna have a war table and we're gonna share everything with you the next week. Like that would, I think, tide people over in the very least.
Yeah, I would definitely feel a lot better. And we do have the promise that there will be a blog post next week with info and details about the way they're phrasing it, very near content drops. So like in terms of expectations for that, do you think that's like an announcement of a war table date, or do you think that's like information we would gather from a war table? Like expectation wise, should we put all our stock in that blog post, or should we be like, okay, what do you have to share about when we learn things? Like there's because I think there's a difference.
I think it's probably the latter. In his state, in was it Scott Amos? Yeah, Scott Amos's statement, he was mentioning that like they plan to have sort of more like communication initiatives, and I think that's probably along the lines of like next week's blog post will probably be like, hey, we're gonna have a war table on this date, and then some other information. Um, but I think the main crux of the content plan will be in a war table. So I think next week is more talking about communication and maybe announcing a date for a war table, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you. It would be great if one of these war table blogs or new communication efforts is like detailing what to expect throughout a month. Obviously, there's risk with that in case of delays, but yeah, I'm hoping next week it's very clear about like, hey, this is detailing the way we're going to talk to you in the future. And in addition, this is some info about the new content drops or some info on when you can expect info on the new content drops.
Yeah.
So I guess the other thing I want to ask you is, as someone who's put a lot of time into this game, out of the content we're kicking around, the AIM Secret Lab, the new Warzone type, potentially what Wakanda will bring to the game, the new hero campaigns. Like, what's the thing that's grabbing your attention most, and what's the thing, if it's different or the same, that you think is going to fix a lot of your negative feelings or sad feelings maybe about the game right now?
Yeah, honestly, just anything that's different. So, all of this is exciting to me because, like you said, like I have probably close to like 130 hours, I would say, something around
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's funny because I've put so much time into it, but I've been doing the same stuff over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine for me because, like I've said, this is a podcast and audiobook game for me. So that's just turn my brain off, listen to something, and level up, or hunt trophies maybe here and there. But like to a certain point, like that gets super boring, and I'd rather be looking at other things
Mm-hmm.
um, when I'm playing the game. So like, yeah, Wakanda sounds super interesting because that that makes me think we're gonna get some sort of new missions, and we're gonna get new places to visit and a new vibe to the game. Um, So I think anything that makes the game different than it already is good in my view. So I'm excited for all that content drop. Kate, Hawkeye, all that stuff.
Well said. I completely agree. Well, do you have any closing thoughts on the state of the game and the community this week before we wrap things up?
Sure. Yeah, just to reiterate my thoughts, like right now this week on October 10th, it is slightly concerning, especially like seeing the player base drop on PC below 1,000. Although, like what you said, it's probably not indicative of the PS4 version or even the Xbox One version. But I'm hopeful, like we have been this whole podcast run, that they'll be continuing to update this game and support it. I think it's kind of impossible not to, given the title of the game and the. I think we'll get some, like you were saying, MPD numbers. So like we'll see like how successful this game has been. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm hopeful that by this time next week we will have a breadcrumb at least of information about what to expect in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the easiest thing to calm fears right now, I think, is next week with the secret lab, put a date on it. Like I think that is something that will give them some time that they probably desperately need. For me personally, while I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited to like team up with you and get Kevin leveled as well, so we can run the raid together. Like I for me, for what I loved about this game, yeah, it feels great to be Thor. Yeah, I really enjoyed just turning my brain off and having fun with my friends or listening to a podcast. But I genuinely really like the story. Like, I really like these takes on the characters, as we went over in our spoiler episode. The characters, the world, this take on the Marvel Universe. So, like, I'm itching for more of that. So, like, I really like that promise of this game, where I don't think a lot of other games as a service games do super well. Like, I love the lore of Destiny, but like, this is Marvel, you know? So I'm very hungry for the Kate expansion, not just because I really love Kate as a character and might want to main her, but like chipping away more at this lore and seeing her bounce off all these other characters that I already really like I am super ready for that. And like you said today on October 10th, like it's it's disheartening. It is a bummer week. I feel like there's a point with a lot of launches for games like this where we have that week. This one feels like it might be a little sooner than others just because there's a lot of questions, and obviously 2020 is a weird year, so maybe that's part of it as well. But I still would like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm definitely looking at the future of the game with a little more of a side eye right now. But I'm not worried. I'm just hungry, I think. So,
Well said. I think I would be worried about this game if we get to like November, mid-November, and we're still wondering the same thing. I don't think that will happen, but if it does, oh boy, that would be worrisome.
yeah. Because like the like for games like this that have a raid, the raid is usually 2 weeks after launch.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going
Yeah.
on a month and a week at this point, pretty much. Like it's baffling, but hopefully, like you said, by next week we will have some nugget of news about the future. But until then, Jack, where can everybody find you?
Sure, you can follow me on social media at Fascinated Jack. Christian and I have a Pokemon podcast called My First Mon. We just wrapped up Pokemon Crystal, and we will be running through Pokemon Emerald for the next season of the show, which is still being scheduled. So look out for that on podcast services and on youtube.com/joyclicks. What about you, Christian?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at Chris N. Buckley. Right here, this show, if you're watching the video version, you're on youtube.com/joyclicks, where we have a bunch of other shows, like Jack said, as well as a bunch of other videos that go up throughout the week, from gaming to Star Wars and a couple things in between. But this show is also available on audio services like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, all the ones that exist, probably you can listen to the show on that platform. So if you can rate or review the show on that platform, it would be greatly appreciated. It takes just a second, helps the show out a ton. And we have much love to all the agents of Excelsior that are in the comments and listen to the show on audio services or on YouTube. And if you only do one, maybe try doing the other one this week. See how you like it. See how you like the experience. You know, can't
Drive
hurt.
around in the car a little bit. Listen to our voices.
I thought you were gonna say drive around in the car with a laptop next to you, have the video version playing.
That's very
don't recommend
possible.
that.
Yeah, or like turn the screen away from you, but do that
Sure.
safely. Put a little seatbelt on your laptop.
On the laptop, yeah.
Make sure it's all safe.
But if you want to get involved further in the shows here on JoyClicks, you can go to patreon.com/JoyClicks, where for $1, $2, and $5, you can have a bunch of other benefits, like getting early access to certain shows, getting questions and comments, concerns read on the shows, or at the $5 tier, you get producer credit for all of our podcasts, like Chris Sakas and Aaron Easton do, so thank you both. But I think that does it for this week's Excelsior, so on a very muted tone.
Taps
Until
playing in
next
the
week.
background.
Yeah. Excelsior.
Excelsior.